Infanta Margarita Theresa, or Margaret Theresa in English, entered the world on July 12, 1651, within the Royal Alcazar Palace in Madrid. Hailing from a formidable royal lineage scarred by generations of inbreeding, her path was fraught with difficulty from its inception. Dispatched to marry her own uncle at merely 15 years of age, she ascended to the title of Holy Roman Empress, only for her existence to be consumed by illness, melancholy, and a relentless cycle of pregnancies. Join me as we delve into her history. Her father was King Philip IV. He had governed Spain since 1621, having taken the throne at the young age of 15. Philip was renowned as Rey Planeta, meaning the planet king, a moniker reflecting Spain's expansive empire, which at the time spanned continents, encompassing vast regions of Central and South America, the major islands of the Caribbean, the Philippines in Asia, and coastal areas of Western Africa. Margaret's mother was Mariana, or Maria Anna of Austria, the daughter of Ferdinand III, Duke of Austria and Holy Roman Emperor. Both her parents belonged to the illustrious House of Habsburg, a dynasty that emerged from the rugged border territories of Switzerland and Austria during the medieval era. Over the centuries, the Habsburgs extended their dominion across much of Europe, not primarily through sanguinary conflicts, but rather by mastering the art of strategic marriage. They forged alliances that facilitated the acquisition of vast empires. By the close of the 15th century, they had inherited the Spanish throne, establishing themselves as Europe's preeminent power, a family whose influence appeared boundless. Beyond their extensive territorial holdings, the Habsburgs were notorious for their perilous obsession with consanguinity. They consistently married within their own bloodline across generations, solidifying political alliances at the expense of their progeny's health. This disturbing practice inflicted severe genetic consequences, progressively weakening the dynasty from within. The familial connection between Margaret Theresa's parents transcended mere distant kinship. They were far more closely related than typical marital partners. In a startling illustration of royal inbreeding, they were uncle and niece. Charles served as a stark embodiment of the ravages of inbreeding. By his early 20s, he exhibited premature aging, experienced balding, and suffered from a grotesquely deformed jaw. His cognitive faculties appeared to decline at a similar pace to his physical state, displaying indicators of early dementia. Contemporaries later dubbed him the Bewitched, widely attributing his physical and intellectual impairments to sorcery. Indeed, Margaret and Charles possessed an extraordinarily high inbreeding coefficient, with some analyses suggesting they were as inbred as offspring born to siblings. To this day, historians debate whether Charles's condition stemmed solely from genetic factors, a tragic legacy of centuries of unchecked inbreeding, or other contributing causes. Margaret, while perhaps more fortunate in health, was not entirely untouched. Though significantly healthier than her brother, she carried the Habsburg curse in her own particular way, as we shall presently explore. Early life. Margaret was reared in the splendor of the Royal Alcazar Palace, an environment of unparalleled luxury where her every desire was attended to by a multitude of maids and servants. For instance, the Infanta frequently indulged in sweet treats and chocolates, which she often concealed from the court physicians. Yet beneath this lavishness lay the oppressive constraints of the Madrid court, where royal etiquette, rigid and unyielding, dictated every gesture, every utterance, and every glance. As a princess of the formidable Habsburg dynasty, she was afforded the highest standard of education wealth and influence could procure. She was instructed in multiple languages, becoming proficient in German to facilitate communication with her Habsburg relatives on the Austrian side, and acquiring some knowledge of Latin, the revered language of academia and the Roman Catholic Church. Despite this comprehensive schooling, no education could adequately prepare her for the predetermined fate that awaited her. As Margaret matured, she could not help but notice the considerable age disparity between her parents. Her father was nearly 3 decades her mother's senior. However, if this observation caused her any distress, she did not outwardly show it. Regardless of the age difference, her parents were deeply fond of her. She was their cherished gem, the sole genuinely healthy child produced by their union, and they lavished her with affection. With her delicate features and vibrant disposition, Margaret captivated those around her. She was affectionately referred to as their little angel, a term of endearment whispered by family members and friends alike. It is perhaps for this reason that her parents commissioned one of Europe's most renowned artist, to immortalize her in a remarkable portrait when she was just 5 years old, a painting destined to become one of history's most celebrated artworks. The painting. Velázquez's painting was initially known as La Familia, or the family. It is now commonly referred to as Las Meninas, meaning the ladies-in-waiting. This title is arguably more fitting as it depicts Margaret being attended to by various household staff members who are adjusting her attire. Among the numerous individuals captured in the artwork, Mari Barbola, a courtier with dwarfism, is particularly notable. In an era where individuals with her condition were often relegated to providing mere amusement for the aristocracy, Velázquez adopted a profoundly radical approach. Rather than simply portraying her as an object of ridicule, he imbued her with depth and dignity, her penetrating gaze hinting at a complex inner life. Even Velázquez himself is included in the masterpiece, standing as a silent observer within the opulent yet strictly regulated environment of the Spanish court. Other individuals are depicted in paintings and reflections within Las Meninas, including Margaret's parents. This was not the only famous portrait of Margaret by Velázquez. He painted no fewer than 5 depictions of the princess during her youth, capturing her beauty and regal poise. In fact, she ranked among the most frequently painted young individuals in early modern Europe, her image carefully cultivated to project power and prestige, a stark contrast to the melancholy destiny that lay ahead. A marriage. It may seem difficult to comprehend for contemporary minds, but by 1656, when Las Meninas was completed and Margaret was only 5 years old, discussions were already underway at the Spanish court regarding her future marriage. In the unforgiving world of royal politics, marriage was never predicated on love. It was exclusively a matter of power. Personal feelings and desires held no weight when the interests of dynasties were paramount. As the daughter of the King of Spain, Margaret was more than just a princess. She was a vital pawn in the high-stakes arena of European diplomacy. Her future determined long before she had any understanding of the implications. As an illustration, at one point, there was a proposal that she might marry Charles Stuart from the English royal family. He was restored to the English throne as King Charles II of England, Scotland, and Ireland in 1660, following England's brief period as a republic in the 1650s. Such a marriage would have served to forge an unlikely alliance with the English at a time when France and Spain were fiercely vying for dominance in Western Europe. Ultimately, Charles instead married Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese bride, in 1662. The failure of negotiations for Margaret to marry Charles Stuart was primarily attributable to King Philip's opposition. Instead, he believed his daughter should marry into the Austrian branch of the Habsburg family. He seemingly harbored no concerns whatsoever that this union would intensify the family's inbreeding. After all, it was simply the established method by which the Habsburgs retained their hold on power. As for Margaret, she was merely 11 years old when the royal court formally announced her impending marriage to Leopold of the House of Habsburg. Following in her mother's footsteps, Margaret was now destined to perpetuate the incestuous Habsburg tradition, set to marry a very close family member, a man who was simultaneously her first cousin and her uncle. Leopold was her mother's younger brother and had, in rapid succession during the late 1650s, become Archduke of Austria, King of Hungary, Croatia, and Bohemia, and the Holy Roman Emperor. Even in the context of early modern Europe, there existed some norms regarding the appropriate age for marriage. Margaret's betrothal to her uncle occurred in early 1663, but she was deemed too young for the marriage ceremony to proceed at that time. Consequently, it wasn't until April 1666, when she was approaching her 15th birthday, that Margaret embarked on her journey from Madrid to Vienna. A 6-month tour followed, with the Spanish royal entourage finally reaching Vienna in December 1666. The marriage ceremony took place a few days later, on December 12th. It was a magnificent spectacle, attended by many of Europe's most influential royals and dignitaries, sparing no expense. The grandeur continued, with celebrations extending throughout 1667. However, beneath the outward splendor, a somber fate was already beginning to unfold. It was customary for royals like Margaret, when leaving their homeland to marry a foreign ruler or prince, to bring members of their former household staff. Consequently, she would have had some familiar faces around her at the Vienna court as she adjusted to her new life. It is even possible that some individuals who had been present in Madrid when Velázquez was painting Las Meninas many years prior were among them. Despite this support network, Margaret remained profoundly homesick, clinging to her Spanish identity and showing little inclination to improve her German language skills. As time progressed, her youthful, delicate beauty began to diminish. Her complexion became paler, her features more weary, and the distinctive Habsburg jaw grew more prominent. The marriage encountered difficulties in other aspects as well. Margaret conceived almost immediately upon her arrival in Vienna and gave birth to a son named Ferdinand in September 1667. Tragically, he survived for only 3.5 months, passing away in January 1668. Their fortunes seemed to improve with the birth of their next child, a daughter named Maria Antonia, born in January 1669. She would be the sole survivor among Margaret's children. Two others were not so fortunate. A son, John Leopold, was born on February 20th, 1670, but died tragically within hours. Another daughter, Maria Anna, lived for merely 2 weeks before her death in February 1672. This heartbreaking pattern foreshadowed further difficulties to come. Final years, Margaret's arduous series of pregnancies were partly attributed to her own health issues. Although she had been a much healthier child than her brother, her health began to decline in the years leading up to and following her arrival in Vienna. Upon her arrival in the Austrian capital late in 1666, observers quickly remarked upon her frequent illnesses. For a period, many attributed this to the constant physical toll of pregnancy. In just 6 years, she endured 6 pregnancies, including 4 live births and 2 miscarriages, each leaving her more frail and despondent than the last. However, as time went on, it became evident that a more serious underlying condition was present. Margaret was often confined to her bed, even when not pregnant. Physicians diagnosed her with an enlarged thyroid gland, a condition for which there was no known cure in the 17th century, leading to a continuous worsening of her health. Margaret's health significantly deteriorated in early spring 1673. She suffered a 3-week episode of severe stomach pains, followed by the onset of a fever. Documents written by foreign ambassadors at the Vienna court during this time indicate that many were gravely concerned for her survival. By early March, she experienced difficulty breathing, and on March 10th, a confessor was summoned to administer her last confession and the sacrament. Just 2 days later, on March 12th, Margaret died at the young age of 21. An autopsy revealed a tragic truth. She was carrying another baby boy at the time of her death. Her life prematurely ended, concluded in the imperial crypt in Vienna, where she was laid to rest. The passing of the Archduchess and Holy Roman Empress prompted a prolonged period of mourning at the Austrian court. Funeral services extended for weeks into April. Leopold was deeply affected by his wife's untimely demise. Nevertheless, his grief did not prevent him from remarrying by the end of the year. His new wife was Archduchess Claudia Felicitas of Austria, a member of the Tyrolese branch of the Habsburgs. For Leopold, however, this marriage was not driven by affection, but by necessity. It was about dynastic survival. The imperative of the lineage had to be upheld, and the desperate need for more heirs, particularly male ones, was paramount to ensure the continuation of the Habsburg reign. A crisis that conceivably might have been averted had the Habsburgs not undermined their own strength through their endemic practice of consanguineous marriages. Thank you immensely for viewing this video about Margaret Theresa of Spain. I trust you found it engaging. Please share your thoughts on the video in the comments section below, and feel free to offer any further suggestions there as well. In any case, I hope you are subscribed and have notifications enabled to receive all my videos promptly upon upload. Thank you.